Have you ever found yourself staring at your phone, wondering why your child hasn't called or messaged back? Maybe it's been days, even weeks. You saw them post something on Facebook. Or maybe you caught their name online, but not a single word sent your way. It stings, doesn't it? That quiet ache in your chest. You wonder if you did something wrong. You start replaying old conversations in your head. Did I sound too harsh last time? Did I give too much advice? Should I have said more or less? You're not alone. So many parents over 60 experience this invisible kind of pain. The feeling of being quietly pushed to the sidelines by the very people you gave your life to. And it's not always because of conflict. Sometimes it's life. Kids get busy, distracted, or even emotionally distant for reasons you'll never know. But regardless of why, you're still left sitting there with the silence and wondering what to do with it. That's what we're going to talk about today, not how to fix them, but how to reclaim you. Because here's the truth. When your kids ignore you, your instinct might be to chase after them, to send another message, to leave a voicemail, maybe even drop by unannounced. But what if I told you that doing nothing might actually be the most powerful response? I know that sounds counterintuitive. We're parents, after all. We're used to solving problems, to fixing things. But when it comes to adult children and their distance, the first step isn't action, it's restraint. Let's start there, with the power of doing nothing. Now, when I say do nothing, I don't mean sitting in your recliner stewing in anger or waiting by the phone all day. I mean refusing to react out of desperation or hurt. I mean choosing dignity over chasing. When you don't chase, you send a quiet message, not to them, but to yourself, that your peace doesn't depend on someone else's attention. You don't let their silence shake your foundation. It's tempting to think that sending another message, just one more, might be the nudge they need. But let me ask you this. How often has that worked in the past? How often has reaching out again actually deepened the connection? Or did it just leave you feeling even more dismissed? Doing nothing isn't weakness, it's strength. It's choosing not to hand your emotional well-being over to someone else. It's quietly saying, I love you, but I'm not going to beg you to remember me. And what happens when you stop chasing? Something shifts. Your attention, which was so tightly wrapped around their silence, suddenly has room to go elsewhere, back to you. And that brings us to the next part of this journey, refocusing on yourself. You see, when your kids ignore you, it's easy to fall into a cycle of self-blame. You start wondering if you were too strict, too soft, too involved, not involved enough. And before you know it, your whole sense of worth is tied to someone else's phone call. But you have a life beyond that. You have passions, talents, stories, memories, and maybe even dreams you've tucked away for years. Now is the time to dust those off. Start with something small. Maybe you used to enjoy painting or gardening or baking the kind of bread that fills the whole house with warmth. Maybe it's something new, like learning to play a few chords on the guitar or taking those morning walks that make your lungs feel alive. You don't have to do anything dramatic, just something that reminds you that your life still belongs to you. When you begin pouring energy into yourself, instead of waiting for someone else to validate your worth, something beautiful starts to happen. You begin to feel grounded again. Your mood starts to shift. The silence from them doesn't hurt quite as much because you're no longer sitting in it. You're moving through it. And don't be surprised if, in time, your kids begin to notice the shift too. They might not say it out loud, but they'll feel it. Your calls will feel less heavy, your energy lighter. And people, no matter their age, are drawn to those who carry themselves with calm confidence, not quiet desperation. So instead of spending your energy chasing after someone who isn't responding, use that same energy to enrich your own world. Sign up for that local class. Go see a movie alone. Yes, alone. And enjoy every minute of it. Visit the farmer's market, just for the joy of conversation and fresh peaches. Create a routine that isn't waiting on anyone else's schedule to feel fulfilling. There's a kind of joy that comes from knowing you can still build a meaningful life, even if your relationships aren't perfect. That joy is real and it's available to you right now. Let me share something personal. A woman I spoke to recently told me her daughter hadn't returned her messages in over a month. She was heartbroken, but instead of chasing, she decided to volunteer at her local animal shelter 3 mornings a week. At first, it was just a distraction, but over time, it became her joy. She made new friends. She laughed again. And one day, her daughter called, out of the blue. Not because of guilt, but because the energy had shifted. Her mother didn't feel like a weight anymore. She felt alive again. That's the power of turning inward instead of outward. You don't lose anything by investing in yourself. In fact, you gain everything you thought you were waiting for from someone else. You may not be able to control how your children act, but you can always control how you show up in your own life. And when you make yourself the center of your emotional universe, not in a selfish way, but in a self-respecting way, everything else starts to balance itself out. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but what if they never reach out again? And that's a valid fear. The answer isn't easy, but it is honest. If someone chooses to stay distant, you still have a choice: to stay stuck in pain or to grow through it. You get to decide how you live, how you love yourself, and what you do with the time you've been given. No one, not even our children, should hold the keys to our happiness. That's not their burden to carry. And it's not your fate to be emotionally dependent on someone else's affection. You've lived too much life, survived too much, and grown through too many storms to let someone else's silence break you. This is your moment to reclaim that strength, to turn the silence into stillness, to find peace in the waiting and power in the living. Because you, my friend, are not finished yet. Your life isn't on pause, and your story, it's still being written, one steady, peaceful step at a time. Let's keep going. You've made it this far without reacting, without chasing, and you've begun to turn your attention inward, back to yourself. That in itself is powerful. It takes strength to stop reaching outward and start planting roots within. But now, it's time to take that strength and add something a little unexpected to it. A quiet shift in energy that can change everything. Let's talk about the subtle art of using reverse psychology the right way. Not as a manipulation, but as a quiet reminder of your own worth. Now, you might hear that phrase and think, that sounds like something people use to play games. But hear me out. This isn't about tricking anyone. It's about showing up differently. When someone expects you to beg for attention, and you don't. When they expect a follow-up message, and instead you go silent, it sends a message. Not one of anger or revenge, but one of strength. People often take for granted what feels too available. That's not just something young people do, it's human nature. And sometimes the only way others realize your value is when you stop offering it so freely. When you pull your energy back with grace, not bitterness. Something interesting starts to happen. They feel the space, they notice the absence. But here's the key. You don't do it to get a reaction, you do it to reclaim your dignity. Imagine this. Your son or daughter hasn't called in a while. You've sent a message, maybe even 2. Nothing. You're tempted to send a third to say, "Are you okay?" Or worse, "Why are you ignoring me?" But instead you let it be. You live your day, you cook your meal, you water your plants. You laugh with a neighbor, take a walk, read a book you haven't touched in years. You stop making them the center of your day, and you place yourself there instead. And without saying a word, you shift the energy. You create space, not out of punishment, but out of peace. And yes, that space might stir something in them. They may feel the change, that quiet confidence radiating from you, and start to wonder, why isn't mom calling me every day anymore? Or, how come dad seems so calm? This isn't about ignoring them back. It's about showing that you're not dependent on their response, that you have your own rhythm, your own strength, your own life. And that, more than any emotional plea, is what often draws people back in. Think of it like this. When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding energy. And when you stop bleeding energy, you start glowing again. People are drawn to that glow. Not out of guilt, but out of curiosity and respect. Now, some might say, isn't that cold? Not at all. It's clarity. And clarity is one of the kindest things you can offer to yourself and to others. Because when you stop performing emotional gymnastics to earn someone's attention, you make it clear that your love is real, but your life doesn't depend on their acknowledgement. And that brings us to something even more vital, the ability to stay calm even when you feel hurt. Let's be honest. When someone you love ignores you, especially your own child, it cuts deep. It brings up so many emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, sometimes even shame. You may want to scream or cry or write a long message explaining how much you've done for them. And that's okay to feel, but what matters most is what you do next. You don't need to suppress your feelings, but you do need to remain steady. Staying calm isn't about pretending it doesn't bother you. It's about not letting it control you. There's a kind of peace that comes when you let the storm rage around you, but you don't let it in. That peace, that unbothered energy, doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from knowing that your value doesn't decrease just because someone else can't see it at the moment. It comes from understanding that silence from others is not a reflection of your worth. So when you feel the urge to react, to fire off a text, to call out of frustration, to demand answers, pause. Take a breath. Remind yourself, you are not powerless here. You are in full control of your emotions, even if your heart feels tender. You can cry, then make your tea. You can feel hurt, then lace up your walking shoes and move your body. You can acknowledge the ache, but choose not to act from it. This is strength, not stoicism. It's not shutting down. It's choosing calm over chaos. Let me tell you something else. Calmness doesn't just protect your peace. It protects your relationships. Because when you stay grounded, you don't say things you'll regret later. You don't let a moment of pain define years of love. You don't pour gasoline on a quiet fire. I once spoke to a man who told me, I used to get so angry when my son wouldn't respond. I'd write him long emails about how much I sacrificed for him. But it never worked. He just pulled away more. Then one day, I stopped. I got quiet, not out of spite, but because I realized I was burning myself out. He went on to say that the less he reacted, the more peaceful he felt. And months later, his son came back. Not with an apology, but with an open heart. Why? Because the father stopped pushing. He started listening to himself. And maybe that's where you are today. Tired of pushing, tired of wondering, tired of feeling like you're doing all the emotional labor. If so, that's not a weakness. It's a signal, a quiet nudge that it's time to protect your peace. There is real power in stillness, not the kind of stillness that comes from giving up, but the kind that comes from standing tall. Because here's what most people don't realize. Calmness isn't silence, it's presence. It's the energy you bring into a room. It's the way you hold yourself. It's your ability to say, I'm okay, even when things aren't okay. When your children see that, when they see you're not pleading, not punishing, just living, they may not say it, but they'll feel it. And that feeling speaks louder than words. So when the silence stretches long and the doubts creep in, come back to your breath. Come back to your body. Come back to your space. Light a candle. Watch the trees sway outside your window. Say a kind word to yourself, even if your voice trembles a little. You are not here to chase peace. You are here to be peace. That's the energy that heals. That's the energy that attracts. That's the energy that lasts. Let's keep moving forward. You've come so far. You've stepped back from chasing. You've begun to nourish yourself again. You've learned to shift the energy with quiet strength, and you've started practicing calm in a world that often pushes you to react. That kind of progress matters. That kind of growth doesn't always feel loud, but it's powerful. Maybe more powerful than anything you could ever say out loud. Now, let's talk about something that may be the most freeing and most difficult step of all. Letting go of the outcome. What does that really mean? It means you stop living in constant anticipation of what might happen. You release the need to control how your child responds or doesn't respond. You don't build your happiness around whether the phone rings. You stop checking your messages with a tight chest. You stop asking, will they ever come around? Because here's the truth. Peace comes not when things go your way, but when you stop needing them to. Letting go of the outcome doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without clutching. You love your child without letting their silence define your day. You give space without bitterness. You allow yourself to breathe, to live, to enjoy the moment you're in, without waiting for someone else's behavior to give you permission. This is hard, especially for parents. We've spent decades tying our well-being to our children's safety, their moods, their choices. For so long, their joy was our joy, their pain, our pain. It's no wonder that silence from them feels like a weight we can't carry. But at some point we must ask, is it really love if it means we lose ourselves? You deserve more than a life of waiting. You deserve mornings that begin with peace, not anxiety. You deserve to walk into each day knowing that no matter what happens, who calls, who doesn't, you're still whole. You're still you. Think about this. How much of your time has been spent living in maybe? Maybe they'll come around. Maybe they'll text next week. Maybe they just forgot. And in the meantime, your joy is on hold. You cancel plans. You hold your breath. You shrink your own life just to make room for someone who might not show up. That's no way to live, and you don't have to live that way anymore. Letting go of the outcome means you reclaim your power. You stop dancing around their silence, and you start moving to the rhythm of your own life. That might look like waking up, stretching your arms wide, and saying out loud, whatever today brings, I'll be okay. It might mean going to the store and picking out your favorite flowers, not because someone gave them to you, but because you deserve beauty in your space. It might mean starting a new project or hobby just for the joy of it, not to distract yourself, but to fully live. Letting go doesn't mean giving up on connection. It means refusing to sacrifice your peace for the sake of hoping. And ironically, when you stop clinging so tightly, that's when connection has room to grow again, if and when it's meant to. You've likely heard this idea before. If you love something, set it free, and if it returns, it's meant to be. But that's more than just a saying. It's a way of living, a way of choosing yourself, not in place of your children, but alongside them. You see, detachment from outcome doesn't mean your love fades. It just means your life doesn't revolve around whether someone else recognizes it in the moment. A woman once told me, I spent 5 years waiting on my son to talk to me again. Every holiday, I'd hope. Every birthday, I'd bake his favorite cake. And every year, I cried alone. One day, I put the recipe card away. I made a different dessert, and I invited friends over instead. I stopped waiting. She told me that was the first year. She felt alive again. A year later, her son called. Not because she begged, but because he finally felt safe enough to come back. And by then, she had rebuilt her joy, brick by brick. She wasn't broken anymore. She was whole, with or without the call. That's what letting go gives you. Space, peace, wholeness. And let's be honest, no child, no matter how much you love them, can fill the space of a life you're not truly living. That space has to be filled by you, your spirit, your wisdom, your presence. So how do you begin? Start by reminding yourself daily that your value doesn't rise and fall with someone else's opinion. Affirm it out loud if you need to. Say, I am worthy of love whether or not it's spoken today. Say, I am allowed to enjoy my life even in the quiet. Then live into those words. Breathe into them. Don't just say them, believe them. This is how healing begins. Not in a single breakthrough, but in the steady, silent, dignified choice to love yourself fiercely, even when others are distant. And let me tell you something you might need to hear today. You're doing better than you think. The fact that you're here, listening, reflecting, trying not to react in anger, means you're growing. It means you care. And caring is a strength, not a weakness. So take this with you. When your child ignores you, it may feel like the door is closed. But you are still standing. You are still breathing. And there are other doors. Ones you've been afraid to open. Doors of joy. Doors of self-expression. Doors of unexpected laughter. Doors of peace. Don't wait for someone else to knock. You hold the key. You always have. And if the silence continues, you'll be okay. Not because you stopped loving, but because you started living. This isn't the end of your story. In fact, it might be the most powerful chapter yet. So here's what I want you to do. If this message touched something in you, if it made you pause, or brought a little calm to your heart, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. You never know who else might be reading and feeling the same way. Sometimes your story becomes someone else's light. And if you'd like more messages like this, encouragement, strength, and real talk for your stage of life, go ahead and click that subscribe button. We're building a community here, a place where you don't have to be perfect, just present, just human, just real. You're not alone, and you're not invisible. You are growing. You are reclaiming your peace. And yes, you are deeply loved. Whether or not your child picks up the phone today, here's to living your best life at any age, one calm, beautiful step at a time.